Hello and welcome to Real Watchers Movie Club. My name is Garrett.
And I'm Kevin.
And we are your hosts. Movie Club is a show where we pick a movie every week and discuss it just like a book club. On today's show, we're covering the musical biopic Amadeus. Our thoughts and more coming up on Movie Club. Released in 1984, Amadeus was directed by Milos Forman and stars F. Murray Abraham, Tom Hulce, and Elizabeth Berridge. The life, success, and troubles of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, as told by Antonio Salieri, the contemporaneous composer who was deeply jealous of Mozart's talent and claimed to have murdered him. It is currently ranked 75 on IMDb's Top 250 and currently has a 4.3 out of 5 on Letterboxd and is ranked 107 on its Top 250. It won 8 Academy Awards for Best Makeup, Best Sound, Best Costume Design, Best Art Direction, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Actor for F. Murray Abraham, Best Director, and Best Picture. It was nominated for 3 more, including Best Film Editing, Best Cinematography, and Best Actor for Tom Hulce. Before we dive into our thoughts, though, we do want to issue a spoiler warning for the film. We are going to be discussing everything that happens in this movie, so plot points, twists, revelations, and so much more. If you haven't seen the film yet, we recommend you do go check it out. You unfortunately have to rent it right now, and it is the director's cut only, but it is available on Amazon for a pretty decent price if you want to go ahead and check it out. But stay tuned to the end of the show so you find out what movie we're covering next week, because it's going to be a good one as well. I feel like we say that every week, but it's going to be a good one. Alrighty, Kevin, so this week was my turn to pick the movie, and I'll just go ahead and right out and say it. I have seen this movie before, but I wanted to pick it because I haven't seen this since like high school band class. Because this is like the movie that, you know, music teachers will show their students if there's like an off day or if the teacher's out or whatever, because it's music related. And it was always kind of one of those movies that I was like, I never really vibed with when I was in high school or middle school. And then I saw more and more that it was like, this film is like beloved. It's like a huge like film buff circle movie. So I really wanted to give it another shot, and especially on the show, because I feel like that part of the whole entire goal of this is to kind of evolve not only your skills, but, you know, mine as well. And I was really excited to watch this movie again. So had you heard of this movie before? Did you know anything about it? What's your history with the film before this?
I have absolutely nothing about it. I didn't even know it was about. When I looked it up, Nadia can confirm this. I was scared because it was like part musical, part like history. But I'm okay with history stuff. Like I could watch like documentaries and stuff like that. Or this is kind of like a biopic from another person's eye too.
Yes,
which I enjoy those. So the musical part kind of scared me, but you know, you just have to dip your toes in the water really quick and then see how you like it.
And to be fair, it's not like a musical as we know it, right? It's not like La La Land. It's not like Singing in the Rain. It just happens to deal with music as its topic. And I mean, if you even, you know, if you, I would like to think that if you breathe or if you know, are alive, you know who Mozart is. So it's like, there is a little bit of fascination there in trying to know who the person was, because it's actually kind of crazy. The movie is not too far off from how Mozart really would have acted. He was kind of a childish human being. You know, he wrote, you know, entire musical pieces that were like a musical fart. Like it's just like, he is that kind of childish person. So it's just such a fascinating dichotomy. Like obviously we think of him as such a, you know, we know of him as like one of the most preeminent composers of all time. And then he's just, you know, he's like a kid on Fortnite. He's not the most mature human being. But I do want to start this out with a bit of an interesting kind of a story. So a lot of people, or not a story, maybe a fun fact, but like a lot of people would assume that this movie is about Mozart, and it is. But I would like to argue that it's also about Salieri, right?
Yeah.
He is the main character of this movie, and we'll kind of talk about it later. Beautifully played by F. Murray Abraham, easily one of the best parts of the movie, as is Tom Hulce, who plays Mozart. And as we'll talk about a little bit later, I think really they are the only standouts with the acting. But I think what's really interesting though is that when you see the movie's called Amadeus, you would think it's about Mozart. But
Hmm.
it's actually not a reference to Mozart's middle name. Because Amadeus, and I don't know which language it is, it could be Latin, it could be Italian, I don't know. But Amadeus actually translates to loved by God, which is exactly what Salieri was looking for the
Hmm.
entire movie. And ultimately doesn't get, right? But
Yeah.
like, and it's just a fascinating, like, it added like a whole nother layer that I
Yeah.
didn't even think about. Because obviously I don't, whatever language it is, I'm not fluent in it. I don't know the exact, meanings of everything, but like, it just added a whole other layer, and I think it fits so beautifully as the name of this movie.
Yeah, it does because he's like you said, I can't pronounce his name. He starts with an
Salieri.
S. Salieri is our main character for a main character that's Mozart. He's like
Yeah.
they can compete for the main character spot in this movie, but the actors both do such a good job that it doesn't feel like one is over, like has a bigger spotlight on them. Um but yeah, that Amadeus thing was funny because Mozart is, like you were saying, a childish person always goofing around, and Salieri devoted himself to God to become a great musician, but then he sees Mozart just fooling around, not and he feels like I want to fool around, but I can't. So
Yeah.
you see it from both ends. Like when they were switching off between like parts, when you see old Salieri and then you see young Mozart, it's like Salieri wanted to be Mozart the entire time, and that's why I think he thinks he killed him pretty much.
Yeah, and that's why obviously, like you said, he thinks he's the one responsible, and you could argue back and forth all day long whether or not he is.
Hmm.
Um, like he definitely destroyed his life, like towards the
Oh
end. Like he could have given him every opportunity in the position that he had, but he just didn't. And it's just, and I guess we'll kind of on the topic of Salieri and of Abraham's incredible performance in this movie, very much deserving of the Oscar. I'll
yeah.
tell you that right now. But like just the level of envy and the level, like, because that's the entire theme of this movie, right? Is envy. Like,
Hmm.
I envy this person for what they can do and hate them for what they are, kind of a thing, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And he doesn't hide it throughout the entire movie. Like he hates Mozart, but he's very like cordial about it when he's there, But but he really respects what he's doing, like what he like his actual music.
Hmm.
One of my favorite sequences in this entire movie. And it may be different. We both watched the director's cut of this movie, which is very important to note for anyone out there. So there may be things we talk about that are in the director's cut that are not in the standard one. But I'm pretty sure this is the Don Giovanni opera sequence
Hmm.
is fascinating to me because you see like a half empty crowd for this show. And Don Giovanni is the one that has the like the ghostly like black armored figure that comes out of the wall
Yeah.
that's supposed to be a stand-in for his father.
Yeah. Hmm.
Um, that sequence is so brilliant to me because you're seeing the effects of Salieri's work, right? You're seeing a half empty crowd. You're not seeing a full packed theater for people who would have sold out to watch Mozart, right? But then
Hmm.
you hear I went to all 5 performances because it was literally like hearing the music of God every night. And it's like it's so fascinating to me
Hmm.
the dual nature of the character.
Yeah, he wants to be like Mozart, so he makes Mozart do his stuff a little bit, and then he goes, "But this is my work. I got to go support my work sometimes." And it's a fine edged sword that he leans on in this movie. You can see his envy, but you can also see like him be jealous of Mozart about how good his musical like tongue is and how sensitive he is to music, especially even when you get first introduced to Mozart and he tells the the emperor to play this song on the piano while Mozart comes in,
Hmm.
and then Mozart does it even better. The
Yeah,
same exact thing, but it sounds so much better.
yeah, and that scene's brilliant too, right? Because obviously Salieri's written this piece of work, and then the emperor plays it, and then Mozart, who already memorized the entire thing,
Mm-hmm.
then plays it, but then writes it better in front of Salieri.
Mm-hmm.
It's so brilliant.
And the other thing is too, when Salieri's looking at Mozart's work, he goes, "No, this is just one piece. He hasn't messed up at all."
Yeah, it's one draft.
Yeah, it's one draft, and he always keeps one draft. That's what his wife said. Wolfgang's wife always said too. Only keeps one draft. This is it. If this is gone, it's gone. So that's what's another interesting like jealousy thing that Salieri has on Mozart as well, is he's just too damn good.
Yeah, he is, and I do think they really do play into. And I guess we'll kind of switch over to Mozart at this point. Like they really play into his childish nature, but also like his incredibly egocentric attitude, right? Like even as people who like we as the audience are like kind of, I don't want to say you're supposed to root for Mozart throughout the movie because he's being, just his life's being destroyed by Salieri, right? But like, it's like I almost don't. Right? Because, he's like, oh yeah, this is the best piece of music ever written. And I know it is. Like, I hate people that are like that in the real world. So it's like, it's kind of hard, but that's the point, right? You're like, I feel like they really do a very good job of kind of being like, here's why Mozart was so good and why you should root for him as the main, as the hero or the protagonist of this movie, right? Mm-hmm. But then also here's why you can peek into what Salieri thinks and maybe identify with what Salieri is thinking throughout most of the movie, right? Like it's a very interesting way to do the story because you're not so much doing a unreliable narrator, right? Mm-hmm. Like Salieri's telling this as it happened. He's regretful for what's happened, as we kind of see throughout the entire asylum sequences.
Yeah.
But we also see it happen. So it's not like we're getting just spoon-fed that he's a horrible person. We see the good things that happen as well, So it's like it's a really interesting way to do it. However, I do want to change gears a little bit because I know we both have a couple of issues with this movie. And before we dive into the major one, I do want to say that I think while F. Murray Abraham and Tom Hulce are incredible in this movie, I don't think anyone else really pulls as much weight as they do. I don't feel like anyone really stands out in this movie. I don't remember anyone except for Mozart and Salieri, to be honest.
Just the wife. That's the only one that I can think of is like the main three because they're the most on the screen though. That's why.
Yeah, and even then, I don't think her performance was like incredible. I think
it was just a wife, just to be there. But I was very surprised of the musicals or like the operas that they put on, how great they were. I was actually really intrigued in those scenes. So I enjoyed them as much as I thought I would.
Yeah, and I mean you're seeing it with all the technical awards at one, right? The costume design, the art direction, these are all incredible things that the film did to really bring those to life. And actually, if I remember correctly, the stage where they shot Don Giovanni is actually where Mozart premiered Don Giovanni in real life.
That's cool.
So it's the actual stage. I mean, it's been restored, obviously, but it's the actual stage. So they definitely get that right. And I think that with the exception of the Don Giovanni sequence, I think most of the opera sequences are a little too long. And that's getting into my major part with this movie. It's like they're beautiful. Don't get me wrong. And I fully appreciate everything technical that's going on there. I could never do opera singing. I 100%, I understand all the technical aspects and I appreciate it. But it's like, it definitely, maybe because it was the director's cut, but it definitely went on a little bit long, I felt. And that's just indicative of the movie as a whole, though. I think the movie is a little too long.
Yeah, especially again, we saw the director's cut, 3 hours. It did feel like a 3-hour movie. So maybe I don't know what the original time is on Amadeus, but it wasn't.
I think it's like 2 hours and 40 minutes. Let me double check.
Yeah, but
2 hours and 40 minutes. So it's 20 minutes longer.
Yeah, that's not bad.
I think it's mostly the musical sequences that were probably extended, or
and like you said, those could have just cut a little bit shorter, and it would have been perfectly fine. But this is like my first like opera like experience, so it was kind of cool to see how it all gets done and everything like that, and how they pick the singers, and the stages look really cool and stuff like that. So I enjoyed it more than I thought.
Yeah, which I'm so glad to hear, because like that's
Mhm.
again that's the whole entire point of this show, right? Is to try and find new things that you might enjoy, but also to build your skills up in
Mhm.
analyzing stuff that goes on. But like as I said, I think my maybe like the length isn't so much what I'm kind of getting at, but I do think that this movie is a little indulgent. I think it kind of plays within itself a little too much. I think like and I think that you know it is a period piece. It's a period drama as well, and I think that like that's probably my one of my least favorite genres as well. Just because I feel like they're a dime a dozen, but they're always so beautiful. So it's always like in my head, I'm
Yeah.
just like, oh, it's so good. I need to see how it's made, but then I'm just not finding myself that interested. But I think that this movie, at least, even though it is indulgent and even though it is a bit overlong, again, we watched the director's cut, but I think that it's still engaging the whole time. Like I never like felt like I was dipping out or that I had to pause my showing to go get some caffeine or something. Like I never like I was engaged the entire time,
Mhm.
which I thoroughly credit the movie for. But
Yeah. I mean, the one times I weren't engaged was like the operas.
mhm,
Like, I didn't have to be engaged. I could just let my mind rest a little bit, and then it went into dialogue. So it was nice to have like it's like
yeah,
an intermission break during an opera. It's like you get a little bit of opera here, and then okay, let's start going into more dialogue and backstory and about everything. So
yeah, 100%. And again, that's why I like the Don Giovanni sequence so much, is because the dialogue that is happening at that moment is mixed with what's going on the stage, and it's
hmm
just so beautifully told that I think is just it really stands out to me as one of my favorite moments of the film.
yeah,
Yeah, and like I said earlier, I think all the Oscars for this movie are very much deserved. So, but I mean, like, it's kind of interesting to see cinematography because I didn't feel like the movie really stood out to me in terms of cinematography. I think the only shots for me that really stand out are the ones of either Salieri or Mozart conducting, and you're seeing like that shot, like almost like you're seeing now, and you're seeing them conduct, but you see the entire audience behind them.
hmm
Those shots are very well done.
yeah.
But I don't mean, and the rest of the movie's kind of like, it's intimate. There's like more, dialogue sequences. It's not so much like action or anything, but like, this camera work in this movie doesn't really stand out. But when we're starting to talk about this and be like, these are kind of negative points or nitpicks, we're
hmm
really shooting for
Yeah.
the weeds on that one. Cause it's like, that's, we could just sit here and talk about nitpicks all day long. But yeah, my only real major criticism is that I think it's a little too indulgent, a little too long. But as I said in my review, and as we've said multiple times here, it's because we watched the director's cut.
hmm
So it'll be interesting to watch the regular version to see if that thought still remains.
Yeah, because maybe that extra 20 minutes kind of puts you over that, like, ooh, it's a little bit too long.
Yeah, and I think that with the director's cut, we do get some issues with pacing as well. There's definitely some slow moments. There's a lot of
hmm
slow moments in this movie, and I think you're held through by the performances from Abraham and from Hulse, but you know it holds you just enough, like that it really kind of saves it from being a major critiquing point for me at
They kind
least.
they kind of ramp you back up. It's like you get that little slow part, and you're like, okay, they're talking again. All right, here we go.
Yeah, it's the best way I can put it is it's almost like you're at a party and you're stuck with a group of friends and you're talking, politics or something that maybe is like not very interesting to you. But then there's that one person in the group that just keeps interjecting with something that's so interesting and so cool
hmm
that you stay engaged in the conversation. But like ultimately, you're just kind of like, oh, this is kind of dull. But man, there's some exciting stuff happening every once in a while.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting, and I make that sound like it's a bad thing. It's not. This movie is not in any way boring. I don't think I ever felt bored through this entire movie, but there are moments when I think I could have.
You
if
could
that
have
makes
just
sense.
like when I think a movie is long is when I'm sitting there watching it and I go, okay, that could be cut a little bit shorter.
Yeah, I definitely kind of realize that when I have to look at my phone or at a clock and be like,
Mm-hmm.
all right, how long has this been? Like, you know? So, I mean, hey, nothing against the movie though. I mean, ultimately it ends up being really engaging the entire way through. It's just a little too long.
Yeah.
So another one of my favorite parts of this movie is when Salieri goes to Mozart dressed in the same outfit that his father was dressed at his birthday party, I believe it was,
Mm-hmm.
and requests the mass piece.
Mm-hmm.
Not only is that piece beautiful, and you hear it throughout the whole entire movie, it's just so cathartic, right? Because the whole entire premise is okay. I need to get a piece of music for someone who deserved a more intense and more ceremonial burial mass or whatever for someone who didn't get it. And he was
Mm-hmm.
just asking for that piece of music. But then it actually ended up being that Mozart was just thrown into a mass grave,
Mm-hmm.
and there was no pomp and circumstance. It's just so like cathartically like I don't know, it's just that entire sequence, or that sequence of events leading to the end, is just it's brilliant in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah.
So wanted to point that out before we ended up cutting this out. But let's go ahead though and talk about our final thoughts, final scores. Since this was your first time watching this movie and it was my pick this week, what did you think of Amadeus? What's a score and what's a kind of rating you gave it?
So my final thoughts are it's a good movie to watch, but I would only watch it once, or if it's on a background, on in the background. I won't be going back to this or anything like that. But it was a good first time watch. I give this 4 stars out of 5. I get an 85 out of 100. Just because, again, I'm not gonna go back and talk about this or rewatch this movie at all. It's not really a rewatchable movie for me, but it was a really good eye opener for, quote unquote musical movie, but a lot about opera and Mozart. And I like the historical facts on this.
Yeah, and that's why it's really fascinating. And I think that a lot of the storytelling through Salieri is just a brilliant choice, and that's just why it makes the name even better. And I'm actually right with you. I gave this movie also 4 stars on Letterboxd. I gave it an 87 out of 100. I think that, yeah, like I said, it's a little too indulgent, a little too long, but again, it was the director's cut, so we can kind of forgive it for that. And I think I could have, used a little bit more of older Salieri talking to the priest. I think that stuff was really cool, but it's still a fantastic movie, and I agree. I don't think it's necessarily the most rewatchable movie in the world. I know there are people who love this movie, and bless their hearts, but
Hmm.
it's not one of those movies that I feel like I need to rewatch again and again and again. I'll probably rewatch it within the next 2 years, and attempt to do a little bit more of a deeper analysis on it, because I think there is a lot to analyze in this movie.
Hmm.
But yeah, other than that, it is fantastic. And if you are looking for something that's a little bit, I would say it's an easier to digest period piece, especially if you can walk out of this, not having seen a movie like it and enjoy it. I think that a lot of other people might be able to. So,
Hmm.
so the question now falls to you. What did you think of Amadeus? Go ahead and leave your comments down in the description below. We will be watching, so be respectful of one another. Next week, we'll be covering the racing true-to-life story, Ford v Ferrari. So make sure you check it out before next week so you're not spoiled. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to us here on YouTube, and follow us everywhere on social media at Real Watchers for more news and updates. We do have our live stream that goes live every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and also other videos that go live on the channel. Here, our movie club goes live every Friday around 4 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, so you have it for your morning commute. And that's going to be about it. Thanks again for watching. Until next time, keep your eyes on the screen.